I would like to introduce our first speaker today. I'd like to invite Robin Terry, Senior Ag Tech Extension Officer at PIRSA, to come up to the stage. In the next series of presentations, we're going to run through the remote sensing, remote monitoring technology. And there's a significant amount of work that's been done over the last 2 years investigating this technology and how it can support and help everyone make better decisions on farm. Robin's main focus for the first presentation will be on Optiweigh cattle weighing system. So, thanks, Robin.
Thanks very much, Paige, for that introduction. So my name's Robin. I'm working here at Struan. We've put a lot of work into a lot of the different technologies that we have on offer today, so I really hope you get a lot out of today. And I will also, shameless plug, if any producer wants to come and have a tour of Struan or Kirby of anything that you see today, please get in contact with us and we'll make that happen. So we have Optiweigh on board here at Struan. What is Optiweigh? So it's a mobile in-paddock cattle weighing system. So the Optiweigh sits within your paddock. You can tow it to any paddock simply by just putting it on the back of the ute. And then it's very easy to set up as well. Bring the drawbar up and there you go. You're pretty much ready to go, and then make a new session on your dashboard, and then you should be able to then start monitoring the weight of your cattle. So the cattle come up to it with the use of a molasses or a lick, and that really entices them to come up to it. And what happens is they put their 2 front feet on top of the Optiweigh, and with those 2 front feet and the weigh bars underneath, it actually then uses an algorithm to work out what is their whole body weight. So you also, when they actually come up to the Optiweigh, there's actually a panel reader on the side of it as well. So a lot of you guys have RFID, EID tags in your cattle at the moment as a really good way to actually monitor individual weights as well. So if you don't have RFID though in your cattle, that's fine. It'll still take the weight. You just won't know what individual animal that is. Also, it's not actually necessary to get the entire mob onto the Optiweigh. On average, we're looking at about 50 to 60% of the mob is actually coming to the Optiweigh. But to get a good trend of what is actually happening within your mob with your live weights, and if there's any variation as well, you don't actually need every animal to visit the Optiweigh, just a good understanding of what is happening in your mob. So what is the value of Optiweigh? So first and foremost, it removes the risk of an unidentified weight loss in your cattle. We've got to talk to a producer over in Victoria, and he was using the Optiweigh. He worked out his feed budgets for his heifers, and he thought, yep, absolutely, my feed budgets are right on track. And the Optiweigh was tracking down in weight, and he thought Optiweigh wasn't working. He rang the owner of Optiweigh and said, mate, your tech's not working. And he said, you know what, I'll just come out to your farm and we'll put them into the yards and we'll see what's happening. His heifers were losing weight daily. His feed ration wasn't actually working right. Turns out what he thinks happened, he didn't crush his fava beans enough. So it was just going straight through his cattle. So without Optiweigh, he wouldn't have actually picked up on that weight loss in his heifers. He did pick up on it though, changed his ration, and that's where the true value of Optiweigh is actually identifying that weight loss. We have used it here at Struan to monitor heifers prior to joining, and I'll go through a little bit of the data that we've got on that today. And we're also using it at the moment currently to monitor steer weights. So we're trying to make sure that they're tracking up in their average daily gain every day. The other good thing about Optiweigh is if you want to know what is happening in your cattle weights at any given point in time, you can just go straight onto the dashboard, see what's happening. You don't need to bring them into the yards. Additional benefit is if you're tracking cattle 5-10 kilometres from your yards, they're not losing any weight doing that. They're actually visiting the Optiweigh. They're actually probably gaining weight. Molasses is fairly high energy dense. So you're not losing that weight to bring them into the cattle yards, and you're not using your time and your labour and any expenses, vehicle use and everything like that to actually bring them into the yards. So that's where the other value is. Not to say that you shouldn't bringing your cattle into your yards to weigh them. Of course, you're going to be bringing them into drench or anything like that. So obviously you would get a live weight at that point. But this takes out the risk. The other thing is if you've got a mob of steers and you've got quite a large tail end that have been losing weight, they're not gaining enough weight, you can actually identify that through OptiWeigh and then be able to pull the mob in, pull your tail out, or either sell your tops and make sure that you're actually hitting the right weights in your price grids for when you're selling either to abattoir or to feedlot or anything. So that's where another benefit is. A lot of the questions I get is, oh, they put their 2 front feet on it, how actually accurate it is. So we tried to solve that answer for you guys. So what we did was we took the cattle in for a yard weigh. And of course, I wasn't going to get every heifer to actually go onto the OptiWeigh on that yard weight day. So what I've done is I've taken the data from a week before the yard weigh and a week after the yard weigh to just try and then match up the EIDs from the yard weight to the OptiWeigh to just see what the variation is in the weight. So please keep in mind this data may be 7 days before the yard weight or 7 days after the yard weight either. So keeping that in mind, the variation between the yard weight and the OptiWeigh is actually very, very small. So on average, the yard weight was about 337 kilos and the OptiWeigh 340 kilos. So it's actually quite small. And yeah, variation was actually quite minimal. So like I said before, you don't actually need all of your cattle to visit the OptiWeigh. We are tracking on about 50 to 60% on average. And you will get variation in terms of how often the cattle do actually visit the OptiWeigh as well. So this was within a 3-month period. We did have quite a few in the maybe 1 to 5 over that 3-month period. There was about 10% of the mob were visiting 15 to 22 times. I had one heifer that visited the OptiWeigh 19 times in a day. She really liked dirt molasses. So this is the output that you will see on OptiWeigh. So what you get is a raw weight. You get a rolling mob average of the last 5 days. They have updated their dashboard. So you used to get a rolling mob average of 10 days, but now it's just the 5 days. And an average daily gain as well. So your average daily gain is this squiggly line that goes up and down. But what you really want to make sure is, one, that your average daily gain is obviously over a kilo a day or over nothing. And then that your trend is actually trending upwards. So these cattle in the space of about 3 weeks went from about an average of about 250 kilos and then kept going all the way up to just under 300 kilos there. So they were gaining well over a kilo a day. What you can also detect within OptiWeigh is if you're having that drop in weight as well, and then be able to actually then rectify it. So this is the mob of steers that we actually have with OptiWeigh at the moment, and they're getting fed quite a bit of silage at the moment and some grain. So what you don't want is this dip. And so this is actually dipping below about negative just under a kilo, just under 0 kilos of average daily gain, which is what you do not want. So obviously then we've come back in with more silage. This might have been a weekend or might have actually been a public holiday at some point. But then you just want to make sure that you actually can notice this and then rectify it and bring them back up, and then you're not having that dip again. And so what we have also tried to do is work out what the return on investment of the Opti will actually be. And please keep in mind that we have made some assumptions on the return on investment as well. So take the figures as you wish. So what we have actually done is, with our mob of heifers that we were monitoring, we've valued our labour at $50 an hour. And some producers tell me, oh, that's way too much, I never pay my staff that. Or, oh, that's actually low. But what I actually think is we do need to value our time a lot more. So that $50 an hour is taking into account salaries, work cover, on costs, overheads. But it's also counting the fact of you could be doing something else, not getting your cattle in just to see what the weights are, to see whether or not you need to be able to put them on a truck in a week or 2 weeks' time. So that's where the $50 an hour comes from. And then we've done things like motor vehicle costs, 72 cents a kilometre, that's from the ATO. And then we've also estimated what kilograms lost can actually be from cattle bringing them into the yard weights. And we've factored that in to be about 1.5% of their total live weight. And then we've made some assumptions on the cost of those heifers per kilo if you did sell them off. At the moment, I think $5 a kilo is actually probably conservative. And then we have also taken them from an induction weight of 230 kilos and then bringing them up to about a target weight of 330 kilos. And we've also factored in a conception rate loss of 10% if they did have a rather significant drop in weight. So I apologise if you can't quite read this, but if you do come visit us afterwards, we do have these case studies in packs for you, so you can take that home and read it yourself in your own time. So apologise if you can't actually quite read this. But what we did work out, the main take-home message, if you did have no OptiWeigh and 5 yard weights within that period of 3 months, you're looking at a total cost of about $5,450 just in your labour, your time, your vehicle costs, and that cost in live weight loss of actually bringing those cattle into the yards as well. However, if you had OptiWeigh, and like I said, you're not cutting out yard weights completely, so we've factored in OptiWeigh, but 2 yard weights, so 3 less yard weights than what you may actually do. And so the total costs then dip down to $2,180 to actually do those 2 yard weights. The total cost of OptiWeigh, I should also point out, is $17,000 plus the $240 annual subscription fee as well. So if you did have OptiWeigh with those 2 yard weights, you're going to have a return on investment in your first year of 13%. Where OptiWeigh comes in is that unidentified risk of having your drop in heifer weights. So we've factored in the cost of live weight, we've factored in your production loss, from a lowered conception rate of having your heifers not at the right point for joining and they're either losing condition, they're not being mated. And so the total costs for that one we've worked out to be about $24,000. $24,000 is a lot more than $17,000. So within that first year, if you pick up an unidentified risk in your mob, you're actually looking at a return on investment of 136% in your first year. So other things that you should consider, whilst the return on investment and the cost is a really important thing to think about, there are other factors that you do need to think about before you think about purchasing this. So the connectivity is 3G, 4G or satellite. But if you are in a really bad spot, satellite you should be fine anyway. But you can actually go up to the OptiWeigh, put a USB stick in the box and actually download the data right there and then if you need. But the beauty of it is, you can sit on the couch at 8 o'clock at night and just go, yep, okay, my cattle are fine. There's a solar panel. We have never had an issue with the charge of it with the solar panel. The communication, like I said, is updated daily. Installation, very simple. Andy and I did get bogged almost one day, so that was the main issue. But we've had no issues with towing it from one paddock to the other, and setting it up is actually a 5-minute job, and then head back to the office, do the session on the dashboard, and then, yeah, you're right to go. And then you do need to think about, are the costs within my budget? Perhaps it's maybe within your budget in the next 3 to 5 years. Maybe it's not right this minute, but what we're trying to do is just let you know the information and what technology is out there to be able to assist you. So just to summarise the critical considerations for OptiWeigh. So what is it you want to monitor? We've monitored steers, we've monitored heifers, but what's the main priority for you is what you do need to think about also. The attractant really is the key. We had a producer over in Port Fairy. he was using salt to attract to the Optiway. He's in Port Fairy. The cattle weren't seeking out salt. So we changed to molasses and he's all good. So we do recommend molasses or a dry lick, but salt for us here, it just hasn't worked. But it depends on your situation as well. It also may take some time for the cattle to actually get used to what Optiway actually is sitting in the paddock. A lot of cattle will get very curious as to what this thing is. In terms of a scratching post, it's stood up pretty well. We've had two flat tyres, but one flat tyre was our fault, so can't really blame that on the cattle. But pretty easy to fix the tyre, so it's actually stood up pretty well. So I'm pretty impressed with it, to be honest. And the other thing is maybe the positioning within the paddock is don't have it, if you're feeding out hay, maybe don't have it right next to the hay bale, because they will go to the hay bale before that. We have found if you maybe put it near a trough, it's going to work better. They're going to be more enticed to go over to it if you're having it closer to a hay bale or anything. And like I said, the greatest benefit in Optiway is removing that unexpected weight loss, and for you to be able to track the weight of your cattle, especially prior to sale, so you know exactly how many animals you're likely to have within that price grid point that you need. We'll also say, again, shameless plug, come out if you're interested in Optiway, come out and have a look. We are getting a new version of Optiway pretty soon in the next, hopefully, couple of weeks. So check back in with us, and if you want to come out and see it, we'll take you out to the paddock and you can actually see it for yourself and you can see the data coming out of it as well. So that's, coming. So please, if you are interested, get in contact with us.